The silent cry, the emergency beacon from Zephyros Prime, cut through space like a scream in the dark. Ambassador Kether stood before the holographic display in the Coalition Council chambers, her translucent blue skin flickering with distress, patterns that her species couldn't hide. Behind her, the images told a story of impending doom that would have broken the heart of any civilized being. Honorable members of the Galactic Coalition, Kether began, her voice carrying the musical undertones that made Zephyrian's speech so beautiful. My people face extinction. Not from war, not from disease, but from a tragedy that could have been prevented. The massive viewing screen showed Zephyros Prime, a world of crystal cities and floating gardens that had been the envy of the galaxy for centuries. But now, a stream of asteroids moved inexorably toward the planet, each one the size of a moon. The Zephyrians had been mining the Kepler belt for rare minerals when their quantum extraction process went catastrophically wrong. Instead of harvesting the asteroids, they had somehow pulled the entire belt into a collision course with their homeworld. Our calculations show impact in 72 standard days, Kether continued, her voice beginning to crack. We have evacuated what population we can, but our ships can only carry 2 million of our 8 billion people. The rest. She paused, unable to finish the sentence, in the council chambers. Representatives from dozens of species listened with expressions ranging from sympathy to calculated indifference. The Zephyrians had always been peaceful, focused on art and philosophy rather than military might or economic power. They had friends but few allies, with the resources to help in a crisis of this magnitude. Chancellor Vorth of the Krillian Empire was the first to speak. His species resembled massive beetles, and his voice carried the clicking undertones of his people. The Zephyrian situation is indeed tragic, he said, his translator rendering his words with mechanical precision. However, the Krillian Empire cannot spare the resources for such a massive evacuation effort. Our mining fleets are already committed to essential operations. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Kether's bioluminescent patches dimmed with despair. Senator Thresh of the Altarian Republic stood next, her serpentine form coiling elegantly as she addressed the council. The Altarian Republic sympathizes with the Zephyrian plight, but we must consider the broader implications. Any species that could accidentally destabilize an entire asteroid belt clearly lacks the technological sophistication to prevent future disasters. Perhaps this is natural selection at work. The words hit Kether like physical blows. She watched as one by one the great powers of the galaxy found reasons to turn away. The hegemony claimed budget constraints. The Stellar Confederacy cited prior commitments. The Void Collective simply stated that they saw no profit in the endeavor. Even species that owed debts to the Zephyrians found excuses. The peaceful, blue-skinned people had shared their art, their music, their philosophy with anyone who asked. Zephyrian hospitals had treated wounded from a dozen different wars. Their teachers had educated the children of refugees. Their engineers had helped rebuild worlds devastated by conflict. But now, when they needed help, the galaxy had collective amnesia. Please, Kether whispered, her voice barely audible over the chamber's translation systems. We're not asking for charity. We have resources, knowledge, anything you want. We just need ships, time, a chance for our people to live. Chancellor Vorth's response was as cold as the void between stars. The Coalition has spoken, Ambassador. We will observe a moment of silence for your species when the time comes. That's when Captain Elena Rodriguez of Earth stood up. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Coalition 18 months ago, After achieving faster-than-light travel, they were still considered primitive by most standards, barely worth a seat at the table. Their ships were crude fusion-powered vessels, held together with determination and improvised repairs. Their technology was centuries behind the galactic standard. Most council members had forgotten Earth even had a representative present. "If I may," Alina said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made several species look up in surprise. She was a small woman by human standards, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had earned her position through merit rather than politics. Chancellor Vorth's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "The human delegation may speak, though I fail to see what the newest member could contribute to this discussion." Alina walked to the center of the chamber, her worn military uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other representatives. "I have a question for the council," she said. "How many of you sleep well at night?" The question caught everyone off guard. Several translators struggled with the idiom. "I mean," Alina continued, "how many of you can rest peacefully knowing that you have the power to save billions of innocent lives, but choose not to use it?" "Sentiment has no place in galactic politics," Senator Thresh hissed. "Logic must prevail." "Logic?" Elena's voice rose slightly. "Let me tell you about human logic. When we see someone drowning, we don't calculate the cost-benefit ratio of jumping in the water. We don't form a committee to study the situation. We dive in because that's what decent beings do." Chancellor Vorth leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering. "And what exactly does Earth propose to do? Your entire fleet consists of fewer ships than some of our escort squadrons." Alina smiled, and there was something in that expression that made more than one alien representative shift uncomfortably. "Earth doesn't have the biggest fleet or the most advanced technology, but we have something that seems to be in short supply around here. We have heart." She turned to address the full council. "The United Earth government authorizes me to commit every available vessel to the Zephyrian evacuation effort. Our entire merchant, marine, our colony ships, our research vessels, everything. We'll strip the seats out of passenger liners if we have to. We'll fill cargo holds with life support pods. We'll make it work." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Ambassador Kether stared at Alina with something approaching disbelief. "You can't be serious," Chancellor Vorth said. "Your ships lack the range for multiple trips. You'd barely save a few thousand Zephyrians, and you'd bankrupt your entire civilization in the process." "Maybe," Alina admitted, "but those few thousand lives matter. Each one is someone's parent, child, friend, lover. Each one has dreams and hopes and stories that deserve to continue." Senator Thresh coiled tighter, her scales rippling with agitation. "This is precisely the kind of emotional decision-making that proves human primitiveness. You would sacrifice your own species' future for strangers." Elena's smile widened. "Senator, you just identified exactly what makes us human. We would sacrifice our future for strangers because we believe that's what makes the future worth having." She turned back to Kether, whose bioluminescent patches were now cycling through colors that the translator identified as intense gratitude mixed with disbelief. "Ambassador, Earth formally requests permission to enter Zephyrian space and begin evacuation operations immediately." Kether's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Permission granted, Captain Rodriguez, and ... thank you." The council session ended in chaos, with various representatives arguing about protocols and precedents. But Alina had already activated her communicator and was speaking rapidly in the human language called English. Admiral Chen, this is Rodriguez. Authorization, Omega-7. I need every ship we have, and I need them yesterday. As the human delegation left the chamber, Chancellor Vorth called out one final warning. Captain Rodriguez, when your inadequate ships fail and your people demand an explanation, remember that the Coalition offered you wisdom. You chose sentiment instead. Alina paused at the door and looked back. Chancellor, when this is over and the Zephyrians are safe, remember that the Coalition offered cruelty disguised as wisdom. We chose to be human instead. The next 72 hours saw the most remarkable mobilization in human history. Every ship capable of interstellar flight was pressed into service. Colony vessels that had been transporting families to new worlds turned around mid-journey. Cargo haulers dumped their loads at the nearest stations. Luxury liners stripped out their amenities to make room for refugees. Admiral Marcus Chen, Elena's superior and one of humanity's most respected military leaders, coordinated the effort. From Earth's orbital command station, his engineers worked around the clock to modify ships for maximum passenger capacity while maintaining life support systems. Sir, his aide reported, we're getting calls from civilian captains volunteering their ships. Freighter crews, passenger liner crews, even private yacht owners, they want to help. Chen nodded grimly. Accept every volunteer. We're going to need all the holes we can get. Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of human space, Captain Sarah Williams of the cargo vessel Defiant Spirit was having her own conversation with her crew. I won't lie to you, she told them over the ship's intercom. This mission is dangerous. We're pushing our ships beyond safe limits, traveling to a system where we might not be able to refuel for the return trip. Anyone who wants to transfer to another vessel can do so with no questions asked. The response came back immediately from her chief engineer, a gruff man named Tommy Park. Captain, with respect, where the hell else would we be? Similar scenes played out across the human fleet. Not a single crew requested transfer, not one. Captain declined the mission. The first human ships reached Zephyrian space 51 hours after the Coalition vote. What they found there broke their hearts and strengthened their resolve. Zephyros Prime was a world in terminal decline, its beauty marred by the massive construction projects needed to build evacuation shelters. The planet's famous crystal cities were being dismantled, their materials used to create temporary housing for the billions who couldn't be evacuated. Ambassador Keitha met the human fleet personally, her small diplomatic vessel dwarfed by the approaching asteroids that now dominated the sky. Captain Rodriguez, she said over the communication channel, I cannot express my gratitude. But I must warn you, our calculations show that even with your entire fleet, we can only save, perhaps, 50,000 additional people. Elena's response would become legendary in both human and Zephyrian history. Ambassador, you're thinking like the Coalition. We're humans. We don't just accept the math, we change it. Asterisk, the human way of the human fleet that descended upon Prime defied every conventional rule of space logistics and evacuation protocols. Where other species would have formed committees and conducted feasibility studies, the humans simply got to work. Captain Rodriguez established her command post. On the surface, in what had once been the planet's most beautiful cultural center, now it served as a coordination hub for the largest rescue operation in galactic history. The building's famous crystal walls had been replaced with functional displays showing ship positions, passenger manifests, and countdown timers that seemed to tick faster with each passing hour. 57 hours until first impact reported Lieutenant James Park, Elena's tactical officer. The lead asteroid is roughly the size of Earth's moon. Elena studied the holographic display showing the incoming swarm. What about the trajectory calculations? Any chance we can deflect them? Dr. Marcus Chen, who had arrived with the second wave of ships, shook his head. The mass is too great, and they're moving too fast. Every simulation we've run shows the same result. Impact is inevitable. Around them, Zephyrian families waited in orderly lines that stretched 4 kilometers. Their natural bioluminescence had dimmed to barely perceptible levels, a sign of species-wide depression that their doctors couldn't treat. Parents held children who didn't understand why they couldn't go home. Elderly Zephyrians sat quietly, many having volunteered to give up their evacuation slots to younger people. What struck the humans most was the complete absence of panic or violence. Even facing extinction, the Zephyrians maintained their natural courtesy and grace. They thanked each human they met, apologized for the inconvenience they were causing, and asked if there was anything they could do to help their rescuers. "Not right," muttered Chief Engineer Tommy Park, as he watched a group of Zephyrian children help human crews load supplies. "They're the ones losing everything, but they keep trying to take care of us." Elena had been thinking the same thing. The Zephyrians' quiet dignity in the face of annihilation only strengthened her resolve to find a solution that the galactic community claimed was impossible. That breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Meyer, a theoretical physicist who had volunteered to join the rescue effort, was reviewing the original mining accident reports when she noticed something that everyone else had missed. "Captain," she called out, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center, "I need to show you something." Elena joined the physicist at her workstation, where complex mathematical equations scrolled across multiple screens. "The Zephyrians have been approaching this all wrong," Maya explained. "They're trying to understand what went wrong with the quantum extraction process. But what if it didn't go wrong? What if it worked exactly as designed?" "I don't follow," Elena said. Maya pulled up a three-dimensional model of the Kepler belt as it had existed before the accident. "Look at this pattern. The asteroids aren't falling randomly toward Zephyros Prime. They're following quantum entanglement trajectories, still connected to the extraction points where the Zephyrians were mining." Elena stared at the display, her tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. "You're saying the asteroids are still responding to Zephyrian technology?" "Exactly. The quantum field they created is still active. It's like a rope that's been cut but not untied. The asteroids are following the quantum signatures back to their source." Dr. Chen joined them, having overheard the conversation. "Even if that's true, Maya, we don't have the technology to manipulate quantum fields on that scale. The Zephyrians barely understand it themselves." Maya smiled, and Elena recognized the expression. It was the same look she'd seen on human faces throughout history, right before someone did something that everyone else said was impossible. "We don't need to manipulate the quantum field," Maya said. "We just need to give it a different destination." The plan that Maya outlined was audacious even by human standards. Instead of trying to stop the asteroids or deflect them, they would redirect the quantum entanglement field itself. By creating a new quantum signature in empty space, they could essentially trick the asteroids into following a different path. "The technical challenges are enormous," Dr. Chen warned. "We'd need to modify our ship's fusion reactors to generate quantum fields. We'd have to synchronize the output across dozens of vessels. And we'd need to do it all within He checked his chronometer, 48 hours. Ambassador Kether, who had been listening to the discussion, spoke up quietly. Captain Rodriguez, even if this plan could work, it would require your entire fleet to remain in the danger zone during the redirection process. If something goes wrong, you would all be destroyed along with my world. Elena looked around the command center at her crew, at the human volunteers who had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers, at the Zephyrian families who still waited patiently for salvation that might never come. Ambassador, she said, has anyone ever told you about human stubbornness? The next 48 hours pushed human engineering capabilities to their absolute limits. Every ship in the fleet was modified, their fusion reactors reconfigured to generate the quantum fields that Maya's calculations required. Human crews worked alongside Zephyrian engineers, sharing knowledge and expertise that their respective governments had never bothered to exchange. Captain Sarah Williams of the Defiant Spirit summed up the general attitude when her chief engineer warned her that the reactor modifications had only a 60% chance of working without causing a catastrophic overload. Tommy, she said, I've been flying cargo ships for 20 years. 60% odds are practically a guarantee. Similar conversations took place across the fleet. Human crews accepted risks that any sane military organization would have forbidden. They pushed their ships beyond design specifications, improvised solutions using spare parts and sheer determination, and somehow made it all work. The moment of truth came with just 6 hours remaining before impact. 43 human vessels positioned themselves in a precise formation around the incoming asteroid swarm, their modified reactors generating quantum fields that painted space itself with invisible threads of possibility. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Park announced. Quantum field generators are online and synchronized. Alina opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Captain Rodriguez. In a few minutes, we're going to attempt something that every expert in the galaxy says is impossible. We're going to save a world and 8 billion lives using nothing but human determination and the knowledge shared by our Zephyrian friends. She paused, looking out the viewport at the approaching asteroids. Whatever happens next, I want you all to know that you've already done something remarkable. You've shown the galaxy what it means to care about strangers. You've proven that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. The countdown reached 0. Across 43 ships. Fusion reactors pushed past their safe operating limits. Quantum field generators that had been improvised from mining equipment and scientific instruments created patterns of energy that had never existed before. Human crews monitored systems that were theoretically impossible, making adjustments based on intuition and hope rather than established procedure. For 17 minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The asteroids continued their inexorable approach towards Zephyros Prime, and several Zephyrian officials began composing final messages to their loved ones. Then, slowly at first but with gathering speed, the massive rocks began to change course. The quantum entanglement field that had been pulling them toward the planet wavered, flickered, and suddenly snapped to the new coordinates that human ingenuity had provided. Instead of smashing into Zephyros Prime, the asteroid swarm curved away into empty space, where it would eventually settle into a stable orbit around the system's outer edge. The silence in the command center lasted for exactly 10 seconds. Then Ambassador Kether let out a sound that the translators couldn't process, a musical wail of pure joy that brought tears to human eyes across the fleet. They did it, she whispered. The humans actually did it. The celebration lasted for hours. Zephyrian families danced in the streets, their bioluminescent skin blazing with colors that hadn't been seen since before the crisis began. Human crews were invited to join the festivities, where they were treated as heroes and lifesavers. But for Alina Rodriguez, the most meaningful moment came 3 days later, when she received a communication from the Galactic Coalition. Chancellor Vorth appeared on her screen, his compound eyes reflecting what the translator identified as profound confusion. Captain Rodriguez, the Coalition has reviewed the reports from Zephyros Prime. We are impressed by humanity's successful intervention. Thank you, Chancellor, Alina replied politely. However, we must ask how such a primitive species managed to solve a problem that our best scientists deemed impossible. Alina smiled the same smile that had unnerved the council chambers just days before. Chancellor, you made a fundamental error in your calculations. You assumed that advanced technology and cold logic were the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and they are not. No, sir. The most powerful force in the galaxy is caring enough to try when everyone else says it can't be done. The most advanced technology is useless if you don't have the heart to use it for others. The call ended with Chancellor Vorth still staring at his screen in bewilderment. 6 months later, the Zephyrian-Human Alliance was formally announced. The partnership combined Zephyrian scientific knowledge with human innovation and determination, creating technologies that benefited both species. More importantly, it established a new principle in galactic politics, that moral obligation could be more powerful than economic interest. Other species began to take notice. The Altarian Republic quietly opened trade negotiations with Earth. Several smaller civilizations requested human assistance with their own crises. Even the Krillian Empire began to reconsider their policies towards species they had previously dismissed as insignificant. Ambassador Kether, now serving as the first Zephyrian ambassador to Earth, stood with Alina Rodriguez on the observation deck of the new joint research station orbiting Earth's moon. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see human and Zephyrian ships working together to explore the galaxy's mysteries. You know, Kether said, her bioluminescent patches glowing with contentment. Before we met your species, we thought civilization was about knowledge and art and philosophy. And now, Alina asked, now we know that civilization is about what you do when someone needs help and nobody else will provide it. Everything else is just decoration. Alina nodded, watching a human cargo ship dock with a Zephyrian science vessel. My species has a saying, Ambassador. We rise by lifting others. I think we're both going to rise pretty high, in the end. The galaxy did turn its back on the Zephyrians, but humanity stood beside them and roared, they're not alone. And in doing so, they changed what it meant to be civilized among the stars.